Bye! My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our DUK Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to another episode of DUK Dogs, everyone. I'm your host, Josh Miller. And before we get rolling, let's make sure we thank our fantastic sponsors that make this show possible. So thank you to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is what I feed my personal dogs and the dogs here at the kennel while in training. They also have a 26-16 blend. They also have the Puppy Pro. Fantastic food. So if you're looking for a high quality premium food and fuel to keep your four-legged hunting partner on throughout the season, check them out, www.eukanuba.com. Thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent is the shotgun shell that I shoot all year long, whether it's in the woods, on mallards, whether it's in the fields on honkers, or whether it's training with the blanks. That's right, they have products to fit all your hunting and training needs. So I'm very grateful and great people inside that company. So thank you to Kent Cartridge. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and in the large sizes. So no matter which size you need, you can be sure that your dog is traveling the absolute safest way possible. They also have a wide variety of products to fit that kennel, between the fan, between the kennel cover, the pad, the cot. They really do go all out to making sure that you're taken care of. So go check them out, www.luckyduck.com. Thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs. Make sure to stock up early so that you get everything you need for this upcoming season. www.gundogsupply.com. Thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear continues to improve on the best as they continue to come out with great products. They just came out with the new ambient jacket and hoodie, which I'm going to hesitate to say is my favorite, but it is right there. It might be my new favorite piece. I absolutely love that hoodie. So go check them out, specifically that new ambient, www.sitkagear.com. And last, but of course not least, thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your premium online training platform. So if you're training your dog at home, you can rest assured that you have the proper guidance to go achieve all of your goals. www.retrieverroadmap.com. So thank you guys for joining me on another week. A lot to recap this week as I just got back from being gone for about 2 weeks. I was gone for about 2 weeks on the road, just shy of 4,000 miles. I think I was somewhere in the 3,500, 3,600 mile range, if I remember correctly. It's a lot of miles in 10 to 12 days. So a lot of windshield time, a lot of driving, but so many great people, so many great hunts, so many great retrieves. It was really an enjoyable way to kick off the season. Before we get rolling, I do want to just take a half second and thank you guys. I know probably most of you guys fast forward through when I thank the sponsors at the beginning, but I'm not joking when I say that this cannot happen without them. The support that they give us, all of this stuff, it all costs to produce. It costs to have the equipment. There's cost that just is involved in this, and I cannot thank them enough. And I would hope that you guys go support them, because they support us, and we can't make this happen without them. And I promise you, so we have Eukanuba, Kent Cartridge, Lucky Duck, Gun Dog Supply, Sitka, and Retriever Roadmap. So that's six sponsors. I bet we have had 60 approach us on being a part of this. And so we're trying to be very selective. I don't want to be a NASCAR ad. I just, get by with what I need to get by, but I'm being very selective, and I want to talk to you guys about the premium gear that is out there. And I've used about everything that is out there. So this is the premium stuff. I try to, filter through that for you guys. So thank you so much to those sponsors. That's very, very important to me. So, so I'm not by myself. You're not just going to have to hear me ramble on today, because I have Whitney here with me.
Hello.
And Whitney was with me for a portion of my travels here the last couple of weeks. And so I wanted her to be able to jump in here and kind of give, some insight. And we're going to kind of recap, some of the hunting situations that we were in, some of the things that we saw. And I have a couple little nuggets that I want to leave you guys with here throughout the program. So kind of keep your eye or ear, rather, keep your ear open, for those. But Whit, first off, thank you for taking time today. I know you have a very busy day with puppies and people coming over to look at a couple of the girls that we have that we're looking to place in forever homes.
Yeah.
So you're busy.
Busy.
But I really, really appreciate you taking this time. So, how did you feel? So you went when we started our season. We took off August 31st. Which is a very, as I told you guys here in the last couple of weeks, extremely hectic time of year for me, because I think I had 6 weekends in a row that I had shows or speaking engagements. It was back to back to back to back to back to back, and then you add on top of it, it's the end of training season. Then you add on top of that, you have the dogs going home, which mean you have clients coming in. So that takes up huge chunks of your day, working with them, entertaining them, which is all great stuff. I love that time, because I love the relationships, right? I love the friendships that come of that. And so it's really a cool thing, but it's a whirlwind. Like I swore I blinked and August was gone. So it's a little stressful, to be truthful. But then you come out of August into September, you kind of take a breath and you're like, okay, season's here. And I feel like we have the absolute best way of easing into season with dove hunting.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I love it.
So kind of bring me through, first off, your kind of perspective on dove season, kind of what we do, where we do it, why we do it, and kind of break down kind of some thoughts that you had of the opening few days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we started a drive going down to Kansas. We have to drive separate, unfortunately, just because then I head back home and then you head down to Texas. But it's so fun because we go to the same place every year with the same people, and it's just so laid back and so fun, which is really my kind of hunting, that I love to just hang out, drink coffee, and really have a great time with the dogs. And you can just see how excited the dogs are, which obviously makes it that much more exciting for us. I brought Purdy again, and her and I just have such a bond together and such a click that I go into it being so confident with her. Maybe even a little overconfident, but I'm so confident with where she's at in her training and how well she's going through everything and how we just work so well together. And it was good. I think that I think I was maybe a little spoiled the first year that I went, which was last year.
For sure you were. Yeah, you absolutely were.
Oh, and the reason I say that is because I feel like we had to work a little bit harder for the birds this time.
A lot harder.
A lot harder. It was wicked hot. It was way hotter this year than last year. And there was not really a lot of water around, I would say. And so I just kind of went into it this year remembering what last year was like. I have to apologize to Josh because I'm
really anxious to hear where this is going.
I mean, I think 2 or 3 podcasts ago, I really talked myself up on my shooting game. And this year I was needing some major help on shooting the doves. I don't know what was wrong with me. I think I was just so overly confident. Now I need to get the clay thrower back out.
If we were filming that hunt, it would have been a lot of beep, 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 beep. as we were bleeping out Whitney's cuss words.
Yeah, I know. Besides my double I got, which I was so proud of. But it's such a great way to kick off the hunting season. Just the two of us. Like you said, August is so stressful. And knowing that now we get to shut that door, open up the fall door, and now we just get to hit it off together, because now you are gone so much traveling and I'm at home still taking care of everything, that it's just really, really nice that we can start together, and it's just fun laid back.
Right. So, okay. So you hit on a couple points there that I want to kind of dig into. So first off, you talked about the people that were there with. Mm-hmm. Okay. So dig into that a little bit, because I think that's important.
Okay. So it is two of our clients, and oh my gosh.
3 technically.
3.
Well, because John and JR.
Okay, yes,
right?
yeah. Okay, so we met them so many years ago through training. They had contacted us for training for puppies, and it has turned into just a crazy great relationship with them, and it's so fun to be able to continue that relationship doing what we all love, and literally the reason that we're all together. It all started with the dogs, and that's why we go out and hunt together, is because of the dogs. And so seeing, we all come from 3 different states, all meet in the same state. Every single year, we all plan for this trip together with all of our dogs, and just have such a good laid back time. And it's kind of one of those things where you would almost think it would feel like work, but it doesn't. We all can separate the training from the business, from the relationships that we have, which makes it even that much more fun to see everyone every year, see the dogs go through training every year, and then just all come together and have a blast.
One of the things I love about, so John is who sets this up. So John, I'm not going to use his last name just because of privacy reasons, but John, years and years ago, this is probably 10 years ago or more. I think it was 10 years ago or more.
Yeah.
I trained his first dog, which then led to him, getting more dogs from us and more training. And he's just been, and he's a couple things. One, he's an incredibly kind person. 2, he ran and built an incredibly successful business. So for me, mentor wise, he's a great person for me to just be around and absorb what he has to offer as far as knowledge wise. And then 3, he's a dog person. He is a dog person, and he understands how to handle his dog. And I love watching him handle his dog at a distance, because especially in a dove situation, I see oftentimes. So if anyone follows Riverstone Kennels, you probably know Sprig. Sprig was a Brock Sage puppy that we put through. We did some content around, and we sold him as a finished dog after the training. And John is who has Sprig. That's who we sold Sprig to. And when I watch John, he'll be sitting there with Sprig, and he'll shoot, and once in a while, John's walking out in the decoys and picking up the bird himself. Right. And so afterwards we'll talk, and he'll be like, I just want to make sure he continues to be steady. And that's one of my ways of doing it. That's fantastic. Especially in a dove situation where everything's easy, everything's dry ground. It's you probably don't need a dog in most situations. Right. It's a great opportunity for him to take advantage of that and make some of the retrieves himself, so that Sprig doesn't get to the point that he's like, every retrieve is mine. Right. So all of a sudden you have a very high drive dog that gets on his toenails because he's that rubber band waiting to snap an and retrieve, which could potentially lead to breaking, right? I think John just does a great job understanding that and reading his dogs. And then what I appreciate is that he understands the business side of it. So he understands, for myself, I can go to that hunt and I can just focus on my dogs, and I can just focus on enjoying where I'm at, because on 99% of the other hunts that I'm on, if there's another dog there, it turns into a training session for me, because something will happen, right? Something will happen with the other dog that it's, Josh, how do I fix this? And I get it, right? If I'm not comparing myself to Tiger Woods, but if I was golfing with Tiger Woods, I would probably be trying to be like, hey, how do I fix this swing? Or how do I not slice? Or how do I, right? You have someone there that does this, right? So I get it, but I would also like to enjoy the moment of why I do this and where I'm at, right? I would like to enjoy working with my dog and not having to take my attention off of my dog to work with your dog, right? John gets that. And John goes into, I don't think John has ever in a hunt asked for my help, ever. Like, if I bring it up, we'll talk about it, but he's never been the one to push and be like, hey, Josh, like, could you come work with him? Could you do this? Like, we did some stuff on a hunt so John and I intentionally one afternoon didn't shoot our limit of birds. So we were able to go out, I think it was the last afternoon, because you had gone home already. And we went out, and we went out that morning and said, hey, let's each shoot 8 so we could each shoot 7 this afternoon. So we went out that afternoon, and we literally just took turns, and we only hunted sprig. So then we could focus on him, right? And it's like, hey, John, you shoot one, then I shoot one, then you shoot one, then I shoot one, right? And we both were there to kind of help out Sprig in something that he was trying to work through. Like, that was totally great. But I appreciate that side of it with John from my standpoint. And so anyway, John has just turned out to be a great friend. I mean, I shot my biggest deer to date, which if you're a deer nerd, he was 190. In that ballpark, he was right there. I can't remember the exact
just to
inches.
throw that out there.
Yeah, just throw that out there. Kind of a big deal. But that was on his farm. Like, he doesn't have to come let me hunt his farm, right? But that's the relationship that we have. So great people. Now, what is interesting too is that where we're at, we do hunt with people that are not our clients. And when I say hunt with, like, we can see them. Like, they might be in the same field or in the next field over. And it is really interesting watching people watch their dog, watch things kind of unravel and how people respond, again, at a distance. When you're at a distance, it gives you a different perspective. When you're sitting there with the dog at your side, you have the same perspective over and over again. Dave and I at the kennel, we do this all the time, where if I'm just struggling, trying to understand, like, something's just going on with the dog, I can't get it. I'll be like, hey, Dave, can you run, Ruger today? And then I sit back and I watch. Just give myself a different perspective. Maybe there's something that I'm just missing, some little thing that for some reason I'm just not gathering from my vantage point. So this is interesting to me. And I watched people that breaking was the biggest issue. Dogs would break. And then there was no control. And you can watch people get frustrated. And then they're yelling and they're blowing the whistle and they're screaming and going off. And it just seemed to be that, of course, then we would come in and it was every excuse under the sun, right? As far as like, oh, like he got too excited with these birds going on, or oh, I forgot my collar at home, or it was there was one that was like, oh, he was just too hot and distracted. Like there are all these excuses, right? And it's just interesting for me, like it just furthers the point of obedience, which we talk about a lot on here. But I'm looking at these dogs at a distance going, okay, so these dogs aren't doing really anything. So it goes back to, if the dog was just steady, if the dog just sat at your side, calm, quiet, under control, even if they didn't go retrieve, or at least not wow you on retrieves, 95% of people would be happy. They're quiet. It is a pleasure to sit next to this dog. It is not a pleasure. I watched one of these. It cannot be a pleasure for someone to sit next to a dog that is sitting there whining, being vocal, wanting to pace back and forth, wanting to go out in front of the, over by the decoy. Like, it cannot be fun, right? So it's just, again, from a distance, it's always so interesting for me to kind of watch that.
That would make me anxious.
Oh, for sure.
So distracting.
Well, and I almost wonder if that doesn't feed it, right? Because like when you come into the season, I'm a big believer in this. You're in one of two camps, right? You're in the camp of camp A is like, I put in the work this summer. I started, in the spring, we touched up what we needed to touch up. We hit goals and objectives throughout the year. We did our preseason prep. Like, we're ready, right? Or there's the other side, which, earmuffs for the kids that are listening. I call it the oh shit camp, because that's what happens. You're like, oh shit, like we have a hunt next week, and Rufus has done nothing but lay on the couch and eat potato chips all summer long. Like, holy cow, we need to get going. Well, if you're in that camp, I have to imagine that you are going to go out to the field. You are going to be anxious. Nobody wants to bring a dog out that's going to be an embarrassment. Nobody wants to bring a dog out that's going to, be a nuisance to their buddies, right? So you're going to be anxious. Well, what do you think that does for the dog?
Totally.
Right? Builds anxiousness, right? And so it's this snowball effect. And this is where I keep going back to the driver of the car ultimately dictates where the car goes, right? If you're driving a Honda Civic, but you're a great driver, you're going to get there in a good, in a timely fashion, versus you could be driving a Lamborghini and you're a terrible driver and that pretty car is not going to go anywhere, right? So the driver is such a big part of this. And so it's, again, from a distance, it's so much easier to kind of absorb this kind of thing.
You know what's really interesting is that when those situations happen in the field, and everyone always is mad at the dog. Why don't people get mad at the handler? At the end of the day, it's the handler's fault. It is not the dog's fault.
Yeah, I think from a handling standpoint, it's ego, right? From the handler, it's like, oh, the dumb dog, blah blah blah. Like that's just you not wanting to take ownership of the situation, right?
Right.
But yeah, from a
like when friends talk, they're like, that dog sucked.
Right.
Well, why did that dog suck? It was because your buddy sucked at training that dog.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the problem there is you probably want to hunt with your buddy. You just don't want him to bring the dog,
Sure.
in this situation, right?
Yeah.
And it honestly, I think it breaks up more hunting groups than anything else. Is that part right there? Because everybody wants to bring their dog, right?
Yep.
But we had this situation in Texas on this Texas teal hunt. So I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the teal part of it, but when we're down in Texas, it's a big group of people, all industry people. Yeti's there, and Heyday, which was Lifetime Decoys, and all these different companies are there, right? And it's a big kind of hangout, like see each other once a year kind of thing. I love it from that standpoint, but there are a bunch of people that bring their dogs that have no business having their dogs there. And so furthermore, the control aspect was completely out of control. So anytime that I am invited anywhere, the dogs are never out roaming and loose. It blows my mind how often this happens. Like you're invited to this place, and you think that your dog is special enough that your dog gets to roam and gets to all of a sudden own this area, right? Like, to me, that's the fastest way to not get invited back, because this is not your place. Like, I have my dogs, and this goes back to, and this is obviously a hot button for me as I'm kind of getting worked up on this, but it's no different than if you remember back in December or January, I did an episode, I talked about this, where, we host Christmas for our families. Everybody brings their dogs, not asking us if this is okay. And we have these random dogs running around our house. Our dogs aren't running around our house. It is our house. Like, what do you think makes this okay? Right? Well, same kind of thing here, right? So all of a sudden, my dogs are always under control. They're always in a crate. They're always where they should be, right? These dogs are, and of course they're all males. So you put a bunch of new males in an area, all trying to figure out where they're at, who's who, right? So you kind of start to see the bowing up. Like, it was inevitable. I made a comment the first day. I was like, there's going to be a fight. Nobody listens. Dogs are still roaming around. Well, what happens day 2? Brawl. And people try to jump in and grab it, and people get smacked in their arm. There's blood all over the place. Like, that is not the dog's fault, right? To your point.
Yeah.
That's the owners not having the wherewithal of, hey, this is a bad situation. It doesn't mean your dog is a bad dog, but what is a dog going to do, especially an intact male dog, right? Like, they're going to try to be a tough guy. And when two tough guys, bow up to each other and nobody wants to back down, something is going to happen, right? And so for me, okay, so I had Brock with me, and I'm not going to let Brock roam around and get, like, Brock is not, the dog that started the fight, when I was bringing Brock in and getting his crate settled in and putting, like, he ran right up to Brock and bowed up, right? And so I'm like, hey, and get that dog away from Brock. Brock is not going to start a fight.
Right.
But he will finish one. He will. Like, that the worst thing, that dog didn't know it, but the worst thing he could have done is pick a fight with Brock, because he's going to turn that table really quickly, and you're going to find out really quickly that was a bad idea. So this dog does that. Of course, I tell the people this dog is going to start a fight. Nobody listens to me. This happens, right? But in this situation, if I just let Brock roam around, that dog does the same thing. He picks a fight. Brock does flip the script and tag him back. Everyone's going to look at that and say Brock did that, right? Just like, nobody, the refs don't catch the first guy that throws the punch in the game. They catch the guy that retaliates. That's who gets the penalty, right? So for me, I'm not going to allow myself and my dog to be looked at like we're doing something wrong. I just avoid the situation, right? And I think that that's what too many people don't do. They don't read it and say, hey, even though I trust my dog, I don't trust the other dogs that are here. So I need to do something, right? I need to take my dog out of the situation so that something doesn't happen. You need to be the bigger person. But to your point, like that dog that the owner's anxious bringing them out in the field shouldn't be there in the first place.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about a situation. I want to talk about a situation that you had specifically, and it was. I'm going to preface this a little bit. So if you guys recall, if you guys haven't been keeping up with the podcast, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease about the beginning of July. For about 6 to 7 weeks in there, it was really hard on me. I had no energy. I was achy, like severe achy. I just felt like trash. It was not, if you're thinking about getting Lyme's, I wouldn't recommend it. That's my take on it. But, it also made it to where my personal dogs did not get much, if any, work, because any energy that I could muster had to go to the dogs that were in for training that I was getting paid for. I had to get them done, right? And by the time I got them done, all I wanted to do was curl up in a ball and go to sleep. And so my dogs went into season with basically 2 months off. So one of the repercussions I saw of it was with Purdy. So she did a lot of things great, right? She was steady, marked well, retrieved a hand, everything great. But one thing that we do a lot of is we'll sit on the bucket when we're shooting marks and we follow the gun, right? So what I mean by that is we'll actually have a gun with poppers. Birds go, when I say birds go up, I mean, bumpers get thrown. And we're sticking that gun out where that bumper's throwing from. And let's just say there's a big, loop where bumper's thrown. It goes from right to left. It arcs. So I'm following with the gun where it's coming from. I shoot at the top of the arc. I follow that barrel to the ground. And then Purdy, and then I send, right? And so what the idea is that we're teaching the dogs to follow the gun barrel. Now, this is important. This is actually very important depending on what you're hunting and where you're hunting. If you're hunting honkers in the middle of a big wide open field, okay, maybe not as important, right? Because they're going to see those B-52s coming in. Like the dogs are going to see them, right? Now, you're dove hunting, where there's a single dove that zips by, like that is very, like sometimes you were shooting, I didn't see the bird you were shooting at, right? And so this is where following the gun is very important. That's where I saw sloppiness out of Purdy.
I totally agree. Completely agree. And not to make excuses for it, but like doves, you can barely smell them. We're hunting in these fields where they can easily like fall and bury, and you barely can find them.
And that's the marking piece,
exactly.
right? So the we'll get to that next. But I mean, like just simply like she was sitting at your side, wanting, you wanted her looking at 12 o'clock,
correct?
And that last bird was at 3 o'clock, and she kept sitting there looking at 3 o'clock, going, I think there's going to be another one coming from here, right? So this is where following your gun, you pull up, swing over to 1 o'clock. She wasn't swinging with your barrel; she was perked up looking at 3.
Yes. Absolutely correct. Yeah. And so she was just having a hard time understanding, okay, they could be zipping from literally anywhere. And she just kept focusing on where that last one was shot, because she's like, okay, it was shot here last time, so there's going to be another one there. And then, then I would swing and shoot somewhere else, and she wouldn't be following my gun barrel to see, okay, now it's over here at, 9 o'clock or wherever we were shooting. And then she would get to the point where she'd be hearing the other shots go off. And then she'd be like, okay, now I want to peek over around you because now there's a bird that fell over there. And she was having a hard time just staying focused and understanding, okay, they are zipping around from everywhere. They're not going to fall in the same spot. And they could sail like no other, which was another big piece of it.
For sure. Yeah. So what I want to dig into here, so let's just finish up the marking piece, because that's a good point too. Like doves, the reality is they're a very tough bird on marking, because not only are they small, don't give off much scent, the coloring is oftentimes very similar to the coloring that they're laying in. But generally speaking, the scenting conditions are atrocious. It's hot. It's dry. There's very little wind. Like they're like, for a dog, if your dog misses a dove by a foot, they might not get it, right? Like that's how atrocious the scenting conditions are, right? But so here's what I want to go back to. So I watched from a distance these guys that had no control over their dogs get really frustrated, came in, were nothing short of pissed off, and then went and took their naps, right? And so what I want to do is, because a lot of us are going to go into that early season, okay? I want to challenge you, and I'm going to challenge you with a thought that Navy SEALs, I'm told this anyway, so correct me if I'm wrong. Navy SEALs are trained to ask themselves a question in the heat of the moment, right? So you're in a firefight, you're in a shitstorm. What are you trained to ask? Ask yourself, right? And what they're trained to ask themselves is, what can I control immediately? What can I control immediately? So in the situation of the guy that we watched from a distance and his dog's out of control, okay? Well, you could bring the dog back, make him sit at your side, put a leash on him, just make him sit there. You can control that immediately. Nobody wants to do that, because you're on a hunting trip to hunt. You want to pull the trigger. You want the dog to get retrieves, right? But you were upset at the end of the day. Nobody had fun in that. What can you control immediately? Because if you control what you can control immediately, maybe tomorrow is enjoyable. Maybe tomorrow you can actually, you'll enjoy being there like you should, right? You've looked forward to this, okay? What we did with Whitney and Purdy, what we controlled immediately is we did some obedience sessions. And so what Whitney would do is she'd take her on a walk, heel, sit at 12 o'clock, heel, just a simple turn to 9 o'clock, sit, simple turn to 6 o'clock, sit, simple turn to 3. And what we started doing is I would walk out to, let's just, again, use the clock reference to 10 o'clock. Whitney says heel, sit, spins her to that side, I throw, okay? Then she comes back, and now I'm at 2 o'clock. Heel, sit. So what we're trying to do is, okay, you're not understanding this. You're trying to guess. Be obedient. Focus on what Whitney is saying. Where does Whitney want you? And that helped.
Totally.
Significantly so.
Yep.
Right? So again, we could control that immediately. We couldn't control that she was excited. We couldn't control that she was just successful picking up 3 birds in this one spot, so she didn't want to leave that visually. Can you blame her, right? It's like, if I just picked up $300 bills in this spot, and then you're like, actually look over here, I'm going to be like, no, like I've been really successful here. I want to go back here, right? So what can you control immediately? This is, I think, a question that you should have in the back of your mind. You should write it down. You should put a note in your blind bag. What can I control immediately? Because this will help you mentally take a breath and mentally just be able to strategically observe the situation that you find yourself in. Because you're not, if you find yourself in a situation that this is not perfect, this is not what I was hoping for, this is not what I was expecting, this will help keep your emotions in check and objectively read what's going on and say, I may not be able to fix all this right now, but I can control this immediately. Guess what? What you can control immediately may be putting the dog away. None of us want that, right? But it may be your answer. So think about that. I think that's something just keep in the back of your mind as you're heading into season. Things are going to come up. What can I control immediately? I'll tell you, I've actually started asking myself that in my business. I've started asking that in my life. When I find, ways, or when I find situations that just have me flustered or have me, going 100 different ways, or I find myself getting emotional, okay, what can I control immediately? Okay, I can't fix this whole problem right now. What can I do right now? And that just helps me take that breath. It's a really good one.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
I get overwhelmed all the time thinking about the big picture.
Big pictures, it's intimidating because it's a big picture.
Yeah.
Right? And we all want to swallow it. We all want to attack it right away all at once. And we can't do that. So by asking yourself that question, it just allows you to take that mental breath and just break it down. Right? Okay, so I can't do all this right now, but I can do this. Well, when you get that done, not only do you knock a peg off of getting to your goal of fixing the issue, but you mentally get a win.
Totally. Yeah.
And when you get a win, now you can build off the win, right? Like guys, the Jaguars are not winning the Super Bowl this year. It's just the way it is. Like I've come to terms with that. I've accepted it. We're not winning the Super Bowl this year. But could we win 7-8 games? Right? Like that would be what can we control immediately, right? Step by step. Let's break this down. How do we get to 7-8 wins? Well, we have to win this week for one of them, right? Well, how do we win this week? Well, an opening drive touchdown will probably go a long way to that, right? How do we do that? Well, we don't have any penalties. We don't like breaking it down, right? Like we still want to get to this. For the love of goodness, I hope one time in my life we win the Super Bowl. One time. But that one time, right? It's a build to that, right? So I want my dog to run a 300-yard blind retrieve, okay? Well, if you're just now teaching blind retrieves, guess what? Probably not happening this year. It's okay. What can we do? Okay, so here, this is great. So being strategic in what you are doing on hunts is very, very important, okay? So I talked to a good friend of mine that had a dog that was going through some advanced work. He's not done, but he has the basics as far as like he understands lining, understands a whistle sit, understands basic casts, but he's not finished. So we're going into the first year. So I thought his first hunt was going to be with me, which again, my hunts are work. So I thought I can help Travis through this and we can run knocks together and we can make sure we're successful. But I didn't realize, so he lives in North Dakota. We go and hunt North Dakota with him. I didn't realize, don't know why, but resident opener is before non-resident opener. So he's going to hunt multiple times before I get there. Okay. So here was the picture. If you get into a volley, right? So you knock down 3, 4, or 5 birds. Most of those birds likely are going to be in or around the decoys because that's where they're decoying to, right? Knox goes and picks up his marks. Boom, 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 boom. All in the decoys. Okay. Now let's say you sailed that one 150 yards, 200 yards past the decoys. You're not sending Knox on that this year. For a couple reasons, okay? One, that's a challenging one distance-wise for him. 2, that's going to be a challenge because just like, let's use the $100 bill example. Okay. He has now picked up 5 $100 bills in the decoys. And now you're going to ask him to go through that, handle through that, and keep going past. He's going to be like, no, like there's got to be more $100 bills here. Right. And ironically enough, in the situations I have found, he's probably right. There's probably one that didn't get marked, or there's probably one that you didn't see. And oh my gosh, now he fought you and was successful. Now we have a real issue, right? But you're asking for a fight. You're asking for him to blow you off. You're asking him to fail in what you're asking him to do, right? So what are we going to do instead? Well, he brings back that first mark. Awesome. Okay. Send him on the next one. And if the decoys are at, I'm going to say 1 o'clock on the clock, he goes back out to the decoys at 1 o'clock. Take that bird he just brought back and throw it at 9 o'clock. Okay, so what you're doing is, you're probably only going to be able to throw it 20, 30 yards, right? But what you're going to do is he goes and picks up those birds. You're going to say, okay, now there's a blind. Heal him to 9 o'clock, dead. Tell him that there's a blind out there. Hand down, back. He's going to take that line. He shouldn't fight it as much, right? Because you've now separated this enough to where the mental picture in his mind is different. So he's going from 1 o'clock looking at the decoys to all of a sudden he's going off to the left to 9 o'clock where there's nothing, right? There's no decoys. There's nothing over here. And he's like, okay, what do I do? Oh, okay, the training kicks in. I understand what you're asking me to do. And yeah, he's going to pick that up very quickly. But guess what? That's a win. You just gave him a win on his first quote-unquote blind. Okay, now I want to work for Dad. Now when Dad tells me to go this way, I know he's not messing with me. There is going to be something there, right? Let the training take over. Not, I'm going to fight you and stay in these decoys. You're going to get frustrated. I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to panic and try to pick something up. You're going to get frustrated, walk out, scold me. That's not the way to transfer this into the field. Wins. How do you pick up a win? Right? And in each game, in each hunt, there are little opportunities to win. Okay? I'm going to go back to the Jaguars because that's what I always go to. So the Jaguars last week, and they should have won by 20. They missed opportunities. And the coach after the game said the difference between the win and the loss. So first off, Coach Peterson, thank goodness that Urban Meyer thing is behind this. My gosh, what a 3-ring circus that was. But Coach Peterson said that each game comes down to 4 or 5 plays or 4 or 5 opportunities. And it's what you make the most of that dictates a win or loss. That is a hunt, right? Mm-hmm. There are 4 or 5 moments in a hunt that dictate whether you deem that was a successful hunt or not with your dog. And this is the same if you don't kill a single bird, you sit there and like, gosh, that hunt sucked. Well, if the dog was sitting there being steady the whole time, that's a win, right? If you were able to keep that young dog engaged with nothing going on, that's a win, right? There are a lot of wins that you can have, but you have to have your mind open to seeing what those could be. And when you see them, you find a way to make that successful. And when you're successful, that's a win in itself. And then you build off of it. So one thing I do want to talk about too is, so down in Texas Teal, I had a moment that I want to share with you guys because I thought it was super, super neat. So I had a time in between the dove hunt and the Texas Teal hunt where I had a few days, and I spent a few days with some good friends of mine that live in Texas, and I went over to they're big cutting horse people. So they have a bunch of cutting horse, and we went over to this like crazy swanky barn training facility. We walked in the barn and there was like electric doors that opened and closed behind us. And I had to wear, in Texas, I was wearing a hoodie because the air conditioning was so cold in this big barn, right? It was crazy. So get in there and we're kind of in like a seating area where we're watching these guys train. And I love the horse, side of the training things because it is so similar to dogs. Mm-hmm. It is almost identical to dogs. You're communicating in a different way, but it's the same thing. So I really kind of geek out on that. So I'm watching, and there was I can't remember his name, but he was an old Mexican guy, and he had done this his entire life. And I was just kind of somewhat eavesdropping, but he would come over and talk to the owners of the horses he was training and saying like, yeah, like, did you see how he did this? Like, you shouldn't have done that. This is why I made this correction here. And it was really fun for me to listen to this. One thing that hit so hard and so true to me was he was working with a horse that initially, and I have no idea what I'm looking at with cutting horses, right? But initially, you could just tell this horse was kind of all over the place and just having kind of a rough session. And by the end of it, looked pretty dang sharp, like maybe the sharpest of, again, I don't know anything of what I'm looking at, but looked probably the sharpest that I had seen of all the horses. So he kind of rides over, and the lady's sitting there, and he's like, he goes, he was pretty excited at first. Pretty amped up, but he, he got to figure it out, and I think he did really well. And he's like, I think, it was a she actually. He said she's a hell of a mare. She's a hell of a mare. And so the owner was like, yeah, she's like, I don't understand it though, because when I go compete with her, it's probably a third of the time she's fantastic right out of the gate, and then 2/3 of the time she's off. and she's not in tune. She's not where she should be, and that's why we don't win. Okay. What he said next was like, poof, okay, and he's like, so his response to that was, he said, because these horses are guitars. These horses are guitars. You can just kind of see in her face, like, what in the world? He goes, when you take a guitar out of the case, what's the first thing you do? You tune it. Doesn't matter who you are, if you're a professional or if you're just once a year kind of a player. It doesn't matter what kind of a guitar. Where like the first thing you do is you take it out and you tune it. Okay. Now the tuning might take 5 seconds, but that's the first thing you do every single time. And that was his point. That's the same thing with these dogs, isn't it? The first thing you do is you tune it. You can have the finished dog. You can have, the titles, the ribbons, the trophies, all that stuff. What's the first thing you do? You go tune it. You do a quick obedience session. You do a couple marks after a long trip when you arrive somewhere, right? Like you do something to get in the same page and tune it. Can some dogs handle not? Yes. Can some horses, I'm sure, handle not? Yes. Can some athletes? Yes. But vast majority? No. Vast majority, you want to tune. You want to make sure you're on the same page. You want to make sure you're in motion together, right? And then from there, now let's go be successful. That's a handler thing, right? That is a handler that needs to understand that, because the handlers that understand that are going to put their dogs in situations to succeed. The handlers that don't are quite frankly going to fail, likely more often than not, unless you just happen to have that dog that goes with the flow and nothing phases them. But that's very few and far between. I just thought that was awesome.
I think that is awesome. And every time you come out and tune, you're going to make a little bit more progress on your tuning.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you come out, you're going to start your tuning with heeling. Okay, now your dog is going to get in a routine that they know now they're going to heel. Now we're going to sit next time. Now we're going to heel, sit, mark. Now,
well, you become a better musician.
Yeah.
Because you know what you're listening for.
Mm-hmm.
You become a better handler because you know what you're looking at.
Yep.
Right. So then, for some reason, like long trip, like shoot 3,500 miles or whatever it was in 2 weeks. So we did a lot of long trips. Well, what did we do? We'd get somewhere. I do some steadied marks. I do some retrieves, and if for some reason I had a dog that was on his toenails and like wanting to go all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't know why you're all jacked up, but you all of a sudden want to go. Well, guess what? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to do an extra obedience session before we go out. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to shoot in that first group, and I'm going to make sure this is not going to be an issue tomorrow. And then you're going to prove it to me one way or another, and then I'll reevaluate and go, prepare from there, right? But this is handling. Again, this is the driver of the car.
Yeah.
How well do you know your car? How well is your car running? How in sync are you with your car? Like, ultimately, isn't that going to be successful? Why do you think, Dale Earnhardt was so successful at racing? Mm-hmm. Okay? He probably knew his car better than anybody else.
Right.
Right. So
you're really throwing out all those sports analogies. We had golf. We have NASCAR. We had football.
It's because it's the only analogy that I feel like I'm at all good at. Because if you throw me in a different arena, I'm just all over the place.
Oh my gosh, it's good.
So so from here, we have our big next trip that we're looking at is North Dakota Waterfall Opener. So I have a couple things I'm going to be doing with my dogs in between here and there. I'll come to you guys next week and kind of talk through some of that stuff, and then we'll be heading to North Dakota. Mm-hmm. So duck season will officially be. I know we're shooting teal, and that's fun and all that stuff, but it doesn't actually feel like waterfall season yet.
Because you're 90-degree weather. Or what?
Yeah. So a really good buddy of mine named Josh Teff, and he's one of the owners of Fowl Co. And if you guys are ever looking for a fantastic outfitter to go to for waterfall, Fowl Co. in Garber, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. They're fantastic people.
Oh my gosh,
really great people.
Great.
But great lodge, great cooking, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we were sitting next to each other on that teal hunt in Texas, and nothing happening. And we're just sitting there, and all you can hear is from all the mosquitoes. I had 2 thermocells going. I had one for Brock sitting next to Brock, and I had one for me sitting next to me. And we're sitting a foot apart from each other. And there were still mosquitoes everywhere. And And Taff looks at me and he goes, thank goodness that this is not waterfalling, because I'd never do it. He's like, this is everything that I hate. I hate being hot. I hate sweating. I hate mosquitoes. I hate snakes. I hate like this is not enjoyable, to me. And he's like, give me 0. Give me 0 degrees right now.
It's true.
Yeah, I know. It's different when you're sweating and you're waterfalling. That's for sure. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here so we can kind of get rolling with the rest of our day. But I appreciate you guys spending another week here with me. So, go be a musician and go tune your dog. Go tune your guitar and think about that through the season. So, the 2 challenges I have for you this week, 2 challenges. Go tune before each session, before each hunt. Go tune your guitar. The second one is, what can I control immediately? Think about that in your life too. What can I control immediately? Go be successful. Go have fun. Go have a great and a fantastic week. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes. And a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.